So the first thing I'll do, I'll read the title of today's lesson, and I will read through the learning objectives with the lens on what will students do in this lesson. So students will form questions, and they're going to do that through the use of interrogative pronouns and adverbs and present progressive verbs. Okay, as I'm reading through this, I'm reminded of the 3 guiding questions. So, this is what students will do to help them understand how English works. Now, I will continue to read through the lesson, keeping in mind the other components. How are they going to access the content? What strategy will I bring in to support that content? And what language resources might they need? I continue reading, stating the objective to students. I will add the why it's important that you know how to form questions. Brings up engagement. It also gives relevance and makes learning meaningful. And so I will add the why. So you will form questions today. This is important because I continue reading. I notice that they're going to use ing verbs, and this is something that they have been working on. And so I will make sure that I mention that. If my anchor chart for ing verbs is still up, I will definitely reference it to let them know that they bring background knowledge to this new objective. We are going to layer that learning. Now, for the turn and talk, I would like to invite students to the front to really stress that this is what we are doing right now. I'm going to bring in total physical response. So as I read through this, yes, there's the prior lesson on ing, and here's the section that aligns to my thinking. I am talking to you right now. You are listening right now. This is when I will invite those students to the front to model and use total physical response. As I continue to read, this here is key. They are going to use ing verbs plus am, is, and are. This is key in forming questions. And so I will make sure that I bring in a strategy at this point. And so the strategy that I'll bring in is a chart to display am, is, and are, and how we use that side by side with ing verbs to form questions during the modeling phase. Now, as I continue to read through here, I also stay mindful of the content. So I could use the sentences here, that's perfectly fine, but I could also use some that align to the content that we are engaging in this week. And so this is the student book, and I know I'm going to go back to the student text, the amplified text. And I'm going to see if I could use sentences from here. Bow. I know that that is a commonly mispronounced word. Bows, bow. So I want to use this. He is bowing. She is impressed. They are talking. Leaps. She leaps out of bed. Is she leaping? Oh, to sew. That is another commonly mispronounced word. So I want to bring that into my modeling. Again, this is my style of teaching. If you'd rather use the ones that are provided, that is perfectly fine. Another thing that I'm noticing here is that, Miguel is thinking is a statement. And when we change it to a question, they actually added in a question word. So what I'd like to do here is I'm going to break it up into two different steps. So first I'm going to teach Miguel is thinking, find am, is, or are based on our chart that I have created that will be up on the wall for them to see. So they'll find one of these. And then the next step will be to change the order. So my chart will have steps. So step one is finding am, is, or are, then change the order by moving it to the beginning of the sentence. So Miguel is thinking is then changed to is Miguel thinking? Then the next step, the third step, then would be adding in that question word at the beginning. But before I go there, I'm going to stay here at this level. Miguel is thinking. Is Miguel thinking? Fatima is reading. Is Fatima reading? For a good couple of examples before I add in the third step. So step one, again, I'm thinking through this. Step one will be finding am, is, and are. Step two is changing it to the beginning of the sentence. That's changing the order. And we're going to stay there for a good couple of practices. That's how I'm chunking it. And then step three will be to bring in that question word. So that's the way that I will model. I go back to my guiding question. So we know what they're working on. What will students do to understand how English works? In this case, they're going to be changing the order of the subject verb agreement. The strategy we've talked about bringing in the visual supported text through an anchor chart and steps within that anchor chart. And so now I'm still looking to see what language resources we might need. So always referencing these three guiding questions as I plan. So I move on to the demonstrating piece. Now, before I move here, I want to make sure that as I'm modeling, I'm also bringing in pictures if I can, especially in that anchor chart. So now moving on to the demonstrate lesson. So it's having me move on to the language page 75, which is this one. Okay. I have eyes on it. And then provide additional practice. I'm actually going to flip these two around. So before I go to page 75, I'm going to provide additional practice. So I'm going to model, provide additional practice, and then move on to page 75. Now, as I'm reading through the additional practice, a couple of things come up. So not only have they added that question word, but they have also dropped a response frame. For example, Maria is playing at the park. Where is Maria playing? The entire at the park phrase is dropped when they turn it into a question. So that will now be the fourth step, ensuring that they have dropped the response phrase once it becomes a question. Now I move on to the guided peer interaction. This is where differentiated scaffolds come in. So I notice that for those who need substantial support, I am going to work with them on the first item, and then the rest will be as a group. So then I will model Peter is jumping on the bed to where is Peter jumping, and again, dropping that response phrase. And the other two will be completed as a group. Those who need moderate support will be in partners, and those with light support will be working on it independently. Now, I also want them to be able to explain how they changed a statement into a question. And they can use that anchor chart with the laid out steps to explain. Oh, and there it is, to explain. And so that is my plan. I go back to ensure that I have helped students understand how English works. That's the task. They have access to the content through the visual supported text chart and language is scaffolded.